For the past few sessions, I've actually spoken, at great length in detail in terms of the importance of dana, as a basic building block, in our spiritual path, and in the practice of the Dhamma. And in this regard, right, I've actually shared with you, a couple of interesting suttas, from the suttas, the Pali canon, and one of the very interesting ones which I highlighted is actually this Anguttara Nikaya, from the book of 5.31, which in this sutta, like I mentioned earlier, it actually records this very interesting discussion between Princess Sumana, and the Blessed One, who at that time was actually in Savatthi, in Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's Park. And during this occasion, the Princess Sumana actually posed some very interesting questions to the Blessed One with regard to the importance of dana. Okay, I've actually explained in great detail, how important the practice of dana is. Remember, I actually highlighted to you, when Princess Sumana asked, about between, a human, right, who between a human who has actually done dana as compared to someone who doesn't do much dana, but both of them are actually of equal virtues, means that both of them observe sila. But the difference is one of them is actually does more dana than the other one. The other one doesn't actually place so much emphasis on dana, and the result of this is that upon the expiry of the lives of these two humans, right, when they actually ascend to the Deva realms, on account of them, being virtuous, they observe their precepts, but when they actually become Devas, there's actually distinct difference, between the two, and the one who actually has done more dana, a lot more dana than the other one, he actually outshines the other Deva, in terms of, all the wonderful qualities, and attributes that, for example, in terms of the longevity, of this Deva, in terms of the beauty and the splendor and the radiance, and also in terms of the authority of this Deva, as compared to the other one who doesn't do, and then of course, when these Devas, when their good merits have been exhausted, and they come back to the world, into the human world, and if they have gone forth, so the effects of this good dana continue, to linger on, to the extent that the monk, who has actually done much dana, he will actually get a lot more of the requisites, allowable requisites from his supporters without even being asked, as compared to the other monk who doesn't do much dana. He's going to find a bit of difficulty in terms of getting the requisites. So you see, the Buddha says, the rewards and also the vipaka, the fruits that you actually reap from doing dana are so wonderful and so remarkable, that one must actually continue to do dana, at all times, as long as we are actually in a way traveling in this extremely long journey of samsara, right? As long as we are actually being shackled, and being chained to this samsara, we have no choice. We actually have to actually ensure that we are mindful to do dana, at all times, because the Buddha says, indeed, it is actually wonderful, for us and important for us to actually do dana, such that we actually have the support and the requisites. Just like when you travel to other countries, you must make sure you have all the requisites. So doing dana is actually very important. But you see, there's actually one very important qualifier in this sutta, because the Buddha, when he actually compares these two human beings who do dana, the premise is that these two, these two, who are one is generous, while the other one is actually does less dana. The important condition is that both of these individuals must actually have a good, must actually observe, impeccable sila. He must actually observe the sila, and also the precepts in terms of the virtues. These two must be equal. They must actually observe sila and virtues both equally assiduously. So that is the condition in this sutta. The Buddha says, if both are equal in terms of the virtues, then the effects of, the dana, more dana and less dana, will be very apparent. Yeah, because if you have good virtues, then only then you can ascend, into heavens, to become devas. If both of them, are actually different in terms of virtues, then you actually can't make the comparison, So that's why the Buddha says, if both are actually equal in virtues, that is the condition, the qualifier for this sutta, then you can then make a comparison between one with more dana and one with less dana. So that's why from this sutta itself, we can actually understand, it is actually evidence how important this sila is. Sila, or what we call virtues, which is actually observing our precepts, is so absolutely important in our spiritual path, in the practice of a Dhamma, because without virtue, there can be no spiritual life at all. So that is actually something that's very important. The Buddha has emphasized over and over again. Your sila must actually be untainted. Must actually be it must actually be guarded at all times. So sila is actually very important. So this is actually one sutta that actually highlights the importance of sila. And the other one, which I also highlighted in my previous talk, is actually extracted from this sutta called this Janusoni Sutta, which is actually found in this Anguttara Nikaya book of 10, and it's actually Sutta 177. So this in this sutta itself, it also records a very interesting discussion, between a conversation between Buddha and also this Brahmin by the name of Janusoni. Like, remember, I actually highlighted, about this Brahmin Janusoni. He said he actually asked the Buddha, because the Brahmin at that time, they actually had this custom, of offering food, in terms of all this food, in terms of food and drinks, to the departed relatives. So he actually asked the Buddha, if we as Brahmin actually offer this food, the edible food, as well as drinks to these ancestors, and friends and relatives who have passed away, would they be able to benefit and partake of these food and drinks? So the Buddha actually gave a very interesting response in terms of, whether it is actually on right conditions or wrong conditions. If they're of wrong conditions, for example, if you're born as an animal, for example, as in the hell, or even in the heavens, they will not be able to actually know that you've offered this physical edible food, offerings. They won't know. They are not able to partake of the food. But if your relative is actually born, as a hungry ghost, or the peta, or afflicted spirit, then these afflicted spirits are said to be actually very near humans. They are actually around us, and because of this edible food offering, so they're able to partake of this food, and they're able to actually consume the food, actually, because for example, the Buddha says, they are able to consume this food that's offered to them. So in a way, it also helps them. So they are able to partake of the food. And also in terms of the merits that we transfer to them, they're also able to rejoice in the merits. So on these two accounts, the Buddha said that you should actually offer, this edible food to your departed relatives, regardless of where they are born, or sometimes even your relatives in these lives, they actually reborn as devas, But how about relatives who were born many, many lifetimes ago? Remember samsara, we have been here for such a long time. It's inconceivable. How many of our relatives have been past relatives, through inconceivable rebirth before, have been reborn as this petas, we wouldn't know, but they could be around us, So the Buddha says you should, actually offer, edible food. Then this Janusoni then went on to say, oh, what if I actually don't have, but what if I actually don't have these relatives in this born as betas? So is there still benefit? The Buddha says yes. There's still benefit if you actually offer dana. And the Buddha then actually says, that then I think the sutta itself continues to say that, if you actually even if you actually just offer food, but you are actually not you are actually, you do not observe your sila well, your sila is actually tainted, and you don't actually guard your sila well, and you actually then break your precepts from time to time. So even if for such a person who doesn't actually observe his sila, but if he actually does a lot of dana, so this person will actually end up, as not as a human, but as an animal, but he actually gets to enjoy all the luxuries of life. For example, he's actually reborn as a pet dog or a pet cat, or perhaps as a royal elephant, maybe in the palace, in the royal palace. He actually gets all the pampers and the comfort, because of the much dana he has done. But because he actually there is some imperfection, because his dana, his sila is actually not guarded well. So he actually did, so his sila, he actually breaks the 5 precepts. He hasn't he does the 10 unwholesome actions, and because of that, he actually loses his status as a human being, or even as a dewa. So because of that, he actually descends into as an animal. But even as an animal, he gets to enjoy all the luxuries of life because of the wonderful dana he has done prior to that. So the Buddha says, each actually has got its own corresponding vipaka. We can't actually say that just because you do a lot of dana, so this the fact that you actually don't observe your sila well, you don't guard your precepts well, that akusala karma, that bad karma, unwholesome karma, cannot be negated or cannot be offset by the fact that you do a lot of dana, a lot you're very generous, you do a lot of donations. So the two do not negate, they do not actually offset each other. So each actually produces its effects. You don't observe your sila, then you lose your status as a human being, and you actually descend as an animal. But because you do a lot of dana, so the effects of good dana then actually allow you, to enjoy all the luxuries of life, as a royal elephant or royal horse, royal stallion, then you're actually well taken care of because of the dana that you have done profusely. So that's why from this sutta itself, this AN 10.177 is another piece of important evidence we see that observing sila is actually very, very important, if we want to continue to be a human being in our next life, or even, if you aspire to be a dewa, in any of the sensual realms, or even to become a Brahma, then you must actually have this very, very basic requisite that your sila must be guarded assiduously, must be guarded very carefully, and it must not be tainted, and must not be in a way that you actually have some taints, that is actually being adulterated because of, you break your precepts from time to time, then it's actually it's a big pity. So that's why the Buddha says it's very important for you to guard this sila, as a very, very basic building block, in our spiritual life, because otherwise, you lose your status as a human being, and you can't even be become a dewa. But of course, if you want to aspire to be a Brahma, you need to have, other than sila itself, you need to actually develop your mind such that you're able to develop jhanas, and the composures of mind, such that you're able to compose your mind up to a level of, either of the first jhana up to the 4th jhana. Then only then you can be actually ascend into the Brahma world, where you're able to, in a way, temporarily overcome, the greed and the sensual desire, sensual pleasure. So because of this, but of course, to be a Brahma, your sila, must be guarded, very perfectly and assiduously. You must actually have a very high standard, of guarding your sila. Then only then you qualify, you have this boarding pass, into the Dewa realm. Otherwise, if you don't actually guard your sila well, then you don't have the boarding pass, even though you have done a lot of dana, but you still don't qualify into to join the Dewa realm, because you simply have not actually guarded your precepts well, and your virtues well, your sila. That's actually very, very important. So as we can see from these two suttas, observing our sila is actually of paramount importance, in our spiritual path, in the practice of the true Dhamma. Before we can actually talk about, liberating ourselves from samsara, the very, very basic thing we need to do is we need to actually guard our sila very, very well, very, very assiduously, right? Like for example, for us, for the lay people, of course, we have the 5 precepts, and of course, we actually have the 10 unwholesome actions, that we actually that we should actually avoid, in order to ensure we do not create the potential for us to descend, into the woeful plains, like to become an animal or, afflicted spirits, or even in the hell. We will make sure that we don't do these 10 unwholesome actions, which I've actually also highlighted to you, in great detail last time. Remember, to avoid killing, stealing, sexual or misconduct, and also in terms of also in terms of slanderous speech, backbiting, tale bearing, and you go and tell tales to others, tale bearing, bearing, and telling, and creating, dissension and friction between otherwise two individuals who are on good, good relationships, and you actually break relationships by actually slanderous speech and this tale bearing, backbiting, and that's actually, or even backstabbing, so that is actually something that's actually very, very potent, unwholesome karma that you actually have to face your fruits, in time to come, because of what you have actually spoken now, this unskillful speech, and also in terms of lying, right, and falsehood, and also in terms of in terms of harsh speech, right, and also in terms of frivolous speech, in terms of gossiping, and also covetousness, you actually long for others people's properties, ill will, you actually hope for the demise, and also for the destruction of people, hoping that they will die, they'll pass, they'll drop off, so hoping for harm, for the other, that's also very something potent, and of course wrong views. So these 10 unwholesome actions the Buddha has highlighted, the 10 ducharitas the Buddha has highlighted many, many times before, to avoid, these 10 unwholesome actions. Otherwise, you're creating the likelihood for you to be reborn in the lower realms, And also, and of course, for monastics, this sila is actually extremely important. The Buddha has actually enacted this code of conduct for monastics, the Patimokkha, and also and also the bigger picture of the Vinaya. There's so many rules that have been established, for the purpose of observing these precepts, and in terms of guarding our sila, our guarding our sila well, and also to ensure that our sila, our virtues and precepts are not tainted and not adulterated by all these by us breaking the precepts. So as I mentioned before, until now, we actually see how important this observing the sila is. But based on my observations, when I actually attend Dhamma talks, for lay people, especially when Dhamma talks are actually delivered in the context of lay people, usually, the importance is actually being highlighted on 5 precepts, and also maybe the 10 unwholesome actions. But I actually rarely actually hear of Dhamma talks highlighting about the 10 unwholesome actions, but merely the 5 precepts, as long as you observe the 5 precepts, that's actually very important. That's actually enough, for lay people. But of course, the 10 unwholesome actions, it is actually much less frequently spoken about. But in terms of 8 precepts, I find that it is actually something that is actually spoken even much less often, by in Dhamma talks, especially in the context of lay people, the laity. And I think most of the time, lay people actually have this understanding, or perhaps a notion, that 8 precepts, this is something that we observe only when we go on meditation retreats. For example, when we go on say vipassana retreats, or maybe retreats on mettas, then we actually observe the 8 precepts. But as long as we are actually we have completed the retreats, and we are actually back home, then these 8 precepts maybe it's not so conducive for us lay people to observe these 8 precepts, because they find that it's a bit difficult, conditions are not right, and I really don't know how to observe, and it's not clear to us actually how to observe. So we find that actually this observance of 8 precepts has not been accorded so much of emphasis, and importance, especially in the context of lay people. So I actually find that we are actually missing a very very important component or very important part of what the Buddha has actually taught in terms of observing our silas. That's why I've decided to actually select this topic, so that we actually understand, in terms of how important observing these 8 precepts is, based on what the Buddha has explained in the suttas, not in terms of our personal opinions, but let us actually pose this question to the Buddha, the Blessed One, and actually ask him, is it really so important for us to observe the 8 precepts in our daily lives, not just on meditation retreats, but in our daily lives, So is it really so important for us to observe these 8 precepts? This is something that I'd like to highlight to you, And for this, I would like to bring your attention or maybe draw your attention to this sutta, which I also find is actually something that is very revealing and is also interesting. Is actually from this the book of numerical discourses, which is Anguttara Nikaya, and this is actually from the book of 10. Anguttara Nikaya, there are actually 11 books, right? So this book is actually book of 10, and it's actually sutta number 46, and it's actually called the Sakka Sutta, to the Sakyans on the Uposatha. Uposatha, is actually, it means, effectively, it actually means a Sabbath, Sabbath day, Buddhist Sabbath day. For example, in other religions, right, we actually have, their respective religions actually have their Sabbath days. Some actually have their Sabbath day, on the Sunday, where they actually go to their respective temples, or churches, and they actually observe Sabbath, and some actually observe Sabbath on Fridays, by certain religions, and the Jews also have their own Sabbath, so they actually have respective Sabbath days. But for Buddhists, during the Buddha's time, the Buddha has actually emphasized a lot on this Buddhist Sabbath day. But somehow, after 2,500 years later, we have somehow lost lost the importance and emphasis that the Buddha has placed on this Sabbath, because the Buddha, and if you read from the suttas, the Buddha actually encouraged Buddhists to actually observe Sabbath days, and they and the Buddhists on Sabbath days, they will actually devote themselves to Dhamma activities. They will actually visit the temples, the monasteries, Buddhist temples and monasteries. They'll pay respect to the monks. They do a lot of merits, in terms of offering food, and also, of course, they also don the white robe, and they observe the 8 precepts, that's why, the 8 precepts is also called the Uposatha Sila, because this is actually the 8 precepts which are actually observed during Buddhist Sabbath days. And of course, they also listen to Dhamma talks, and after that, they actually meditate the whole night through, until on this Sabbath day. You can actually see that also in, for example, in like Ajahn Chah, if you see the documentaries, you find, some documentaries, you find that the Buddhists, they were so devoted, they actually visited Ajahn Chah's monastery, and they actually observed, the Sabbath day, and they actually observe the 8 precepts, Upusata Sila, and they listen to Ajahn Chah's Dhamma talk, and they actually practice meditation the whole night through, by sitting cross-legged, and watching the breath, and then and also practicing samatha and vipassana, seeing, the non-self nature, through the 6 sense bases, So you can see, the Buddhists, in past times, even before our time, the Buddhists place a lot on Sabbath, but somehow this tradition has somehow lost the momentum, and we find that nowadays Buddhists actually don't even know when the Sabbath days are, and they don't even know, like, let alone observing 8 precepts, right? And they only go to temples, and do dana as and when they have time, or maybe Sundays or Saturdays, and most of us Buddhists nowadays, we don't even place much emphasis on Sabbath days, and we don't practice the eight precepts, So we find that somehow the essence of the teaching of the Blessed One somehow has been diluted to such a significant extent that we don't actually we don't even know the importance of 8 precepts anymore. And this situation that we're facing now actually is not just peculiar, to our situation right now. If you see this sutta itself, even during the Buddha's time, the people, in India at that time, like we can see from this sutta, especially the Sakyans, right? Sakyans, they were actually they were actually in a way the village of the Blessed One before the Blessed One, actually renounced the world and became a renunciant, and before he became, a blessed Buddha, and these Sakyans were actually the people, of the Buddha's race, and you find that during this time, even though the Buddha had actually given them a lot of discourses of importance of observing Sila and observing the Uposatha Sila, now we find that these Sakyans also were not very consistent and somehow negligent in observing the 8 precepts, So let's see, what actually happened in this sutta. This sutta itself, it actually records this situation, this occasion where the Buddha was actually staying near Kapilavatthu. As you know, Kapilavatthu was the in the hometown of the Buddha, right? At that time, the kingdom of, not so much kingdom, but it was in a way like it was like a state. It was basically like a in a way like a village or state of at that time in India called Kapilavatthu at Banyan Park. And then at that time, this Sakyan lay followers, being the Uposatha day, it was actually the Sabbath day. They went to see the Blessed One, and then and of course on arrival, they actually paid respect to the Buddha, and as they were sitting there, these Sakyan people, the Buddha actually asked them, Sakyans, do you observe the 8-factored Uposatha? So the Buddha actually asked these Sakyans, do you actually observe the Uposatha, the 8-factored Uposatha, which is the 8 precepts, consistently, on every Sabbath day, do you actually observe the Uposatha? And then these Sakyans actually say, oh, Blessed One, sometimes we do, Lord, and sometimes we don't. This is the response given by the Sakyans to the Blessed One. So and see the Buddha's response. The Buddha says, this third paragraph in shaded in yellow, the Buddha says, it's no gain for you Sakyans, it's ill-gotten, that in this life that is so endangered by grief, in this life endangered by death, that that you sometimes observe the 8-factored Uposatha and sometimes you don't. So the Buddha actually, in a way, the Buddha in a way reprimanded in the Sakyans, and also reminded them that it is actually ill-gotten for you. It is no gain. Means that it is not good for you at all. It's not beneficial to you at all, that you actually are so inconsistent in the practice of 8 precepts. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you don't. Do you actually realize that in the life that you live in, life is so brief and is so transient and so impermanent? Our human lives are actually empty. They're actually non-self. That we are faced with so much of impermanence and so much of uncertainty. That death actually may be knocking our doors at any time. Without you knowing. It can be any time, whether you anticipate it or not. Death. It's actually just maybe just a doorstep away, and you can never bargain with death. So the Buddha says, it is actually not beneficial to you that you actually are so inconsistent. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And of course, the Buddha goes on by actually highlighting, giving some similes, some similes about a man. He actually earns his salaries, by earning. Here they use the currency at the time is called the kahapana. During the Buddha's time, they use a currency called kahapana. So the Buddha says that this man, by some profession, he actually earns all these salaries and wages that he actually earns from doing his profession. The Buddha actually goes on to say, that he earns 1 kahapana, 2 kahapana, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 100, kahapanas and 1,000 kahapanas. And the Buddha says, what do you think, would that man, because of the wealth that he has amassed, on account of that wealth, will he actually be able to enjoy the untainted bliss for a day or two, or at least half a day or half a night, or half a day or night, or half a day or half a night? Will you be able to enjoy sense pleasure, that is actually untainted, where you are able to actually enjoy it without any worry at all. You worry about something, when you're enjoying the sensual pleasure, somehow you worry about certain things. You cannot have a complete peace of mind when you enjoy sensual pleasure. Then, of course, this Sakyan say, no, Lord. And why is that? Because sensual pleasures are inconstant. They are hollow and they're false and deceptive by nature. These sensual pleasures, they're actually just like a bowl of honey for you, or maybe something that's actually very, very pleasant. It actually sort of chains you, it sort of bewitches you, and you feel that, you feel very attracted, attached to this sensual pleasure. But this sensual pleasure is something that is very hollow, because it's conditional upon that sensual pleasure being there, right? Whether it is nice music or whether it's actually nice food or nice company, right? But can these sensual pleasure objects be there all the time? That's why the Buddha says that this sensual pleasure is conditional. It is something that makes you want more and more, because you actually have this notion that this sensual pleasure has a self to it. It's permanent. You want to have more and more of the sensual pleasure, just like a dog that's actually, the dog, when they actually gnaw on the bone, right? They want to bite more and more of the bone, but there's actually no flesh to it, but he just enjoys, and he keeps on biting and biting and biting, but there's actually nothing substantial to it, because these sensual objects, they actually empty and hollow. Once they disappear, your sensual pleasures also disappear, and after that, you crave for it more, you hanker for it and you long for it, so your mind is disturbed and you want more and more. You want the sensual pleasure to continue more and more. So that's why the craving is there. That's why it actually chains you to this samsara, because you keep on being led around like a cow that's being led around by the nose. You're just being, or maybe like by a leash. You're just like a dog, going round and round. Because of this sensual pleasure, you actually want everything to perpetuate, to be permanent. You keep on searching for it. So as long as you don't actually let go, and you don't actually uproot and be dispassionate about this sensual pleasure, forever you cannot be out of this samsara. As long as you have this greed, this hatred, this delusion, you want things to be permanent. These three evil roots, and of course the three evil roots have their master, the ignorance as their master. This avijja, is the kingpin, is the really the master behind it, and they actually have these three children called loba, dosa, moha. So as long as you have these three evil roots, forever, you want to have more and more sensual pleasure, and because of that, you actually end up more and more in samsara. You can never get out of it. So that's why for you've been in this samsara for so long, we don't see the Four Noble Truths, and that's why the paticca samuppada goes on forever. It perpetuates. Your consciousness just goes from one realm to another. Finding a nama rupa to establish itself. It goes on and on. Because of what? Because of this avijja. Avijja. Then you have this volitional formation, this sankhara. You want to more and more. And this sankhara itself will create the consciousness to actually look more and more. You create the karmic energy in the process. So that's why the Buddha says, if you want to keep on having this sensual pleasure, and you because of that you neglect your observing your 8 precepts, then you are actually being blinded by these realities of life, of this impermanence in whatever we have in this world. All the sensual pleasures we have are just like they're just like crooks. They're just like magicians. They actually they in a way they're trying to play tricks on us, by creating all this mirage on us that we feel as though it is real, but actually it's not, because we haven't seen the underlying nature of non-self. So that's why the Buddha says you must practice the 8 precepts. Do not be actually clouded by this sensual pleasure. So from here we see this 8 precepts, observe 8 precepts is very, very important. We must actually observe these 8 precepts, not just on meditation retreats, but also on Sabbath days, the Buddhist Sabbath days. We must make the resolution to observe the 8 precepts. make sure that, you know, we actually have this strong resolution. Always remember what the Buddha tells the Sakyans, you know, in terms of, you know, how impermanent and how empty and hollow sensual pleasure is. You know, everything is really empty. You know, the Buddha says everything is actually anatta. You know, Feb Dhamma anatta. You know, everything is actually empty. So that's why we know we make sure that the Buddha says do not actually be in a way clouded and be tricked you know, by these sensual pleasures. You know, that is Mara's snare for you. You know, so make sure you don't fall into the snare and keep on longing and craving for sensual pleasures. Must try to really, you know, gradually cut off, you know, be dispassionate about it, you know, don't be disillusioned by all these sensual pleasures. So make sure you observe the 8 precepts, you know, as the first step, you know, for us to actually develop ourselves, you know, spiritually. Okay, so that's why the Buddha actually in Anguttara Nikaya 8.41, again, the Buddha actually tells the monks in terms of these 8 factors, this Uposatha Sila, you know, and what are these 8 precepts? You know, this sutta actually tells you what actually entails observing the 8 precepts. Okay, let me just go through with you very quickly here. The first precept here, of course, is in terms of abstinence. You know, in terms of abstinence from destruction of life. Means you abstain, you know, and abandon. You try to abstain and abandon the destruction of life. You know, as long as I live, you know, I want to emulate, you know, like the Arahants. The Arahants actually they do not commit killing knowingly. They do not actually consciously and knowingly commit killing. You know, so they actually lay aside their rod, their weapon. You know, and they actually dwell compassionate towards all living beings. You know, and for today for this night and this day, on this Sabbath day, I also want to emulate the Arahants. You know, I also want to abandon and abstain killing and destruction of life. So this is the first precept, you know, the first precept in the 8 precepts. And of course, the second one is also the same, you know, as our 5 precepts, which is also, you know, not taking, you know, what is not given. Just like Arahants do not actually accept what is not given. They only take, you know, what is offered, what is given. So for me, for this night, for this day and night, for today on this Sabbath day, I also want to be like to actually emulate the Arahant. You know, I also want to make sure that I do not commit stealing. You know, I do not take what is not given to me or offered to me. And the third one regarding this precept, you know, the third precept under these 8 precepts is different from the 5 precepts. The 5 precepts, you know, is Kamesu Michachara, means you do not commit sexual misconduct. But for the third precept under the 8 precepts, you know, you actually observe celibacy. You know, you are celibate, you know, for that day and night when you're actually observing the Sabbath. You know, you actually observe celibacy. You are celibate and you abstain from sexual intercourse. And because this sexual intercourse is actually a common person's practice, and today I want to be like Arahant. You know, I want to, you know, observe a celibacy. I'm celibate, you know, and I do not, and I actually do not commit this and abstain from sexual intercourse. So that is actually the third precept, which is the Abrahmacharya. So the third one is actually different from the 5 precepts, you know, which is sexual misconduct. But under the 8 precepts, the third precept is actually Abrahmacharya. Means you actually abstain from sexual misconduct and you observe celibacy. Okay. And the fourth one, in terms of the 8 precepts, is the same, you know, as the 5 precepts, which is to avoid abstain from false speech. You know, no, you don't actually speak falsehood, and you don't deceive others. So Arahants don't speak falsehood. So you want to emulate the Arahant, you know, and you do not also speak falsehood. And the fifth one is that you know, it's so similar to the fifth one. You know, you actually abandon and abstain from liquor, from wine and intoxicants, which is the basis of heedlessness. So this is actually the same, you know, as the 5 precepts. You know, so you abstain from taking intoxicants and wine. You know, and this is because this actually causes unmindfulness, causes you to be muddle-headed, you know, and you're not actually mindful, you know, what you do. So that is something that we need to make sure, you know, that we observe. And then the 6th precept, you know, of this Uposatha Sila, you know, is that you want to emulate the Arahant. I only eat once a day, abstaining from eating at night and food from outside the proper time. So here, in terms of the sixth precept, the sixth precept is that you actually don't eat solid food and unpermitted beverage, and outside, after the solar noon. The solar noon is actually the time when the sun is actually at the highest in the sky, and that time, is the time, that you should actually stop, taking solid food and also beverages which are not permitted. So this number 6 is actually Vikala Bojana, Vera Manisika Padam Samadhi. Means you do not actually eat outside these after the solar noon time, but before that, you can actually have perhaps 2 meals if you want, there's actually no limit, but after the solar noon, you're supposed to actually fast. There's no solid food allowed, and you do not actually take beverages which are actually not permitted. So this Vikala Bojana, is actually number 6 in terms of eating at the proper time and not eating, outside the proper time. And make sure you don't take solid food during the improper time. So this number 6 is also important. And of course, number 7, Buddha says, as long as they live, the Arahants abstain from dancing, from singing, from instrumental music, from unsuitable shows, from adorning, they wear garlands, they wear ornaments, they beautify themselves by wearing garlands, and they use perfumes and scents and unguents. So the Buddha says Arahants, they don't actually practice such acts. So for today, when I actually observe the Uposatha Sila, I also want to emulate and also behave like an Arahant, and I want to make sure I do not dance, I don't sing, I don't sing songs, I don't go and play musical instruments, and then I don't actually watch shows on TV, go and watch shows on theaters and cinemas, and also I actually do not wear all the garlands, and ornaments, and I don't go and beautify myself by wearing makeups, and also maybe and also applying perfumes and unguents and scents, So this is a seventh precepts, which is actually Pali is a very long, Nacha Kita Vatita, Visugadasana, Malagana Vilipana Dharana, Mandana Vipusanatana, Vera Manisika Padam Samadhi. So number 7 also, we make sure that we don't actually do all these things. And number 8 is actually we don't actually we live like Arahants, means we abandon the use of high and luxurious beds. It means we don't actually rest and sleep on high and luxurious beds. We make sure when we sleep, we actually lie down on the low resting place, either on a small bed or a straw mat, just like the Arahants. Ucha Sayana, Maha Sayana, means we actually avoid from sleeping on these high and luxurious beds, because Arahants they sleep on what, on grass mats, on mats, on very low beds, so they don't actually sleep on high and luxurious beds. So I also want to emulate the Arahant. So the number 8 is that we don't sleep on this high and luxurious beds. So the Buddha says it is in this way, bhikkhus, that the Uposatha is observed complete in the 8 factors, so that it's of great fruit, great benefit, extraordinary, brilliant, and pervasive. So the Buddha says if you observe the 8 precepts, the Buddha says the fruit is so remarkable, it's great fruit and great benefit, extraordinarily brilliant and pervasive. Of course, this sutta it just stops short of at that. The Buddha actually doesn't go on to say how is it of great fruit and extraordinarily brilliant and pervasive, right? Okay, so to actually find out what the Buddha means by saying great fruit and great benefit, extraordinary, brilliant, pervasive, let us also investigate and do some detective work. We actually need to find out what does the Buddha actually mean when he says excessively brilliant, right? Why is it that the Buddha says by observing 8 precepts, it is actually extraordinarily brilliant? So to explain that, we need to go to another sutta, which is AN 8.42. In this sutta, the Buddha actually talks about why is it brilliant, why is it, extraordinarily pervasive. Okay, so here is actually, again, it records a discourse given by the Buddha to the bhikkhus. And this Dharma talk that the Buddha gave to the bhikkhus is actually about the Uposatha Sila. It's an 8 factors Uposatha. So here, this Buddha tells the bhikkhus, bhikkhus, observe of complete in 8 factors, the Uposatha is of great fruit and great benefit, extraordinary, brilliant, and pervasive. So you see, then in this sutta, it is interesting because the Buddha in this sutta explains, and how is this Uposatha observed complete in 8 factors so that it's great fruit and great benefit, extraordinary, brilliant, and pervasive. Then, of course, the Buddha talks about the 8 precepts here, which is also is actually the same as what I spoke to you just now in 8.41. Okay, it talks about how you observe the 8 precepts. So that's why the sutta doesn't actually give you the whole account. It says as in 8.41 down to use of high luxurious beds. Right. So actually, this whole section is the same as 8.41 about the 8 precepts. So it is actually not repeated here, but it says as in 8.41 down to number 8. Then the second section here, it says, in this way, bhikkhus, that the Uposatha is observed complete in 8 factors so that it is of great fruit and great benefit. And then the Buddha says, to what extent it is of great fruit and great benefit, and to what extent is it extraordinary, brilliant, and pervasive. Look at this line that I already highlighted, shaded in yellow. Okay, so the Buddha says, the Buddha explains here, suppose one were to exercise sovereignty and kingship over these 16 great countries abounding in the 7 precious substances, that is countries of the Angans, the Magadhans, and the Kasis, the Kosalans, and also the Vajis, the Malas, the Chetis, the Vangas, the Kurus, the Panchalas, the Machas, and the Surasenas, the Asakas, the Avantis, and the Gandharans, and the Cambodians. So you see, at that time, during the Buddha's time, there were these 16 great countries, which were actually listed by the Buddha during that time. This 16, and you see this Kosalan is actually this King Pasenadi, right? King Pasenadi is actually the king of Kosalans. But other than that, you got other kings as well. The Magadhan king, King Bimbisara. So all these kings, they were actually the kings of the respective countries. And Buddha says, assuming that you actually have sovereignty over this entire 16 great countries, you are the king for this entire 16 countries. And the Buddha says, even if you were the king for these 16 countries, the 16 great countries, this will not be worth a 16th part of the Uposatha observance complete in those 8 factors. Means what the Buddha is trying to say, that even if you were the king, the sole dominion, the sole king of these 16 great countries, the benefit and also the in terms of the benefit and the worth of this being a king is not worth. Can you imagine a 16th part, 1/16, of the merits you get by observing Uposatha Sila complete in the 8 precepts, the 8 factors. And why is that? The Buddha says because human kingship is poor, is miserable compared to celestial happiness. Even if you're the king, you're not happy, because you're always beset by a lot of kingdom problems, a lot of wars. Sometimes you need to actually pass out sentences to actually punish, death sentence to people. You observe, you actually break your precepts, because once you pass judgment to have, perhaps the criminals killed, or executed, you actually have commit, bad karma, and you are forever worried about other kingdoms, invading your countries, whether their armies are stronger than yours, whether you're worried whether there are any espionage, any of your enemies are within you, and you're also afraid whether there are actually anyone who betrays you, So there's so many of these worries because you are the king, and you've got to make a lot of decisions, and people are jealous of you because you are the king, they want to overthrow you, So can you really be so happy as a king, even though you are the king of these 16 kingdoms, like maybe you are the king of, I don't know, maybe the king of Thailand or maybe Great Britain or what? Can you really be happy, absolutely happy? No, I don't think so. They may seem to be happy, but there's so much worries, about them, about their families, about the king, about the king, about the country, about so many things they have to worry about. But that's why the Buddha says to be a human king is actually miserable compared to celestial happiness. But if you practice your 8 precepts, and and upon the breakup of your body, because of the marriage from the practicing 8 precepts, you are actually reborn. First in the Deva realm. So, for example, if you are actually reborn in the first realm, of the central realm, the central Deva realm, which is the 4 great heavenly kings, or the Chatu Maharajika Deva, the 4 great heavenly kings, which is the lowest heaven nearest to human. So these 4 great heavenly kings, they are actually very near us. They actually observe, what we do from time to time. These 4 great. If you read the suttas, these 4 great heavenly kings, actually they do their inspection on us from time to time. If you read the suttas, because they're very near us, they are just like one layer above human. And these 4 great heavenly kings, it's if you happen to be born there because you observe the 8 precepts, the Buddha says, one day and one night in this 4 great heavenly king is equivalent to 50 human years. That means for one day for you to spend one day in these 4 great heavenly kings is equivalent to 50 human years in our human life. So which means when they have finished one day in the 4 great heavenly kings, we would have been 50 years old. So can you imagine how long one day is actually this day on these 4 great heavenly kings? It's really so marvelous. And and the Buddha says sorry, and the Buddha says in this 4 great heavenly kings, they also actually have got 30 days in a month, and they actually have got 12 months in a year. So you see, even in the celestial realms, their months and the years are the same as us. So they actually have got 1 year equals to 12 months, and 1 month equals to 30 days. And one day their 1 day is different from ours. Because you're talking about this is actually the celestial time. It's different from human time. So celestial time, 1 year in this Chatu Maharajika Dewa is actually 50 years here. So if you multiply 12 times 30, 12 times 1 year itself, there's 12 months, right? 12 months, times 30 days, and then you actually multiply by another 50. You find that the lifespan of this Chatu Maharajika Deva is actually 9 million human years. So can you imagine for 9 million human years, you are there, even in the lowest 4 great kings, you're already there for 9 million years, enjoying all the remarkable and the exquisite enjoyment of a Dewa, You are there for 9 million years, just because you have been very disciplined, and you actually observe your 8 precepts. Just for this maybe 80 years, maybe you put in a lot of effort just for these 80 years. Because of that, you actually enjoy 9 million years as a 4 great as maybe you are one of the 4 great kings, or maybe you are the retinue of the 4 great kings, but it doesn't matter. But your life is 9 million years. Can you imagine how wonderful it is? That's what the Buddha says. If you're able to just be a bit patient, observe your 8 precepts, so the benefits far outweigh that you are a king of 16 kingdoms. You are actually better than any king, any emperor in this world. You are much better than them. And the Buddha goes on by saying, for the Tava Timsa Devas, right? Okay, this is the four great heavenly kings. Tava Timsa heaven it's the same also. The 1 year equals to 12 months, and 12 months in 1 month is 30 days. But you see, the Tava Timsa heaven, which is actually what our Saka Deva Raja is, our king of the Devas, this Tava Timsa, our Saka Deva Raja, 1 day and 1 night is actually equals to 100 human years. That means a Tava Timsa Dewa, if he has actually spent 1 day up in the Tava Timsa heaven, it will actually be equivalent to 100 human years. So if you multiply 12 times 30 times 100 human years, actually if you observe your 8 precepts and you become a Tava Timsa Dewa, you are there for 36 million human years, Is that mind-boggling, right? So just by observing 8 precepts, just maybe be patient, observe it well, imagine, maybe, maybe you observe that maybe for 40 years or 30 years, after you really start practicing it, just for 30 or 40 years. Can you imagine? It's equivalent to 36 million human years that you are actually a Tava Timsa heaven, Then, of course, the Buddha goes on by saying, you see, as you go up and up, for example, as your merits, because you practice a lot, it's depending on your how well you practice your sila, and your dana, you go up and up and up, And these Yama Devas, they are actually the Devas of the uh, they are actually the Yama Devas. And these Yama Devas, actually 1 day and 1 night there is actually equal to 200 human years. More and more, longer and longer. And you see the Tusita Devas, where the Bodhisattvas, before they become, they descend onto the human realm to become Sammasambuddhas, when they are actually up in the Tusita heaven. Can you imagine? The 1 day and 1 night, these Tusita Devas, or Devas of the contented, these Tusita Devas, is actually equivalent to 400 human years, Can you imagine 1 day in the Tusita heaven is equivalent to 400 years? We would have been long gone already, right? As human beings. I don't know how long gone, 400 human years, but they're still there, but it's just 1 day. So the Buddha says as long as you go up and up, the Nimana Rati Devas, the Paranimita Vasavati Devas, all these go up and up, and this goes all the way up to the Brahma world. The Buddha says your lifespan is extremely long, and you enjoy a lot of this exquisite enjoyment. The celestial happiness is just unspeakable. You cannot actually describe. That's why how wonderful, the enjoyment and the exquisite pleasure, of being a Dewa. They take celestial food, they have got all the maidens to accompany them, they have got all these wonderful gardens, the Nandana gardens, they just play all day long, don't have to work, they won't have to worry about working or responsibilities, every day, they just play day in, day out, they just play, have fun, enjoy, and it's so wonderful. They don't have to worry about anything at all, no worry about work, about responsibilities, it's just day in, day out. It's just wonderful, they're just having this pleasure, and of course we must also worry, we must not also despise and condemn the Devas, because of their enjoyment, because they deserve it, because of all the wonderful merits they have done in terms of observing their Uposatha Sila and also doing Dana. They deserve this enjoyment, and not to forget, because of their long lifespan, it is possible that, when the next Buddha comes, this when the next Buddha comes, and after this Buddha, when the next Buddha comes, the Metteyya Buddha comes, and of course the Buddha is always reborn, in as a Bodhisattva, in the Middle Kingdom. Is always in India, always the same place, and these Devas, they actually have the chance to visit the Buddha, when the next Buddha comes. For example, maybe you might follow the Sakadeva Raja, and to come, and follow him when the Sakadeva Raja, decides to meet the Buddha on Vulture's Peak. Can you imagine if you are the Deva, then you actually have this fortune to be able to follow the Deva, and listen, follow Sakadeva Raja and listen to the next Buddha on Vulture's Peak, giving a Dharma talk, and then you might become a Sotapanna, or you might even become an Arahant on that then. So that's why it is very important for us to aspire to be reborn in the Deva realm. As long as we haven't actually ended this journey of samsara yet, we must strive to reborn in the Deva realm. Either as a Brahma or as a Deva, we must strive, because as humans, our world is actually deteriorating. It's not going to get any better for us. Look at the political situation right now. All the corruptions, the environmental destructions and degradation. This world is actually not going to be any better. It's actually one day it would actually be distracted by this world. So we do not want to stay here, when time comes, when the Dhamma is no longer there, we are still here on human world, we're going to suffer a lot, We don't know what the Dhamma is, we break the precepts, forever, ever, you're in woeful plains. So we must actually strive to at least go up to the heavens, And the only way to actually ensure that you go up to heavens is make sure you observe the 8 precepts, and of course must practice, your meditation, such that you are able to become a sotapanna and a stream entry. Then at least the woeful plains are actually you won't fall into the woeful plains, and you can actually ascend to the heavens. So the first step is you must make sure you practice the Uposatha Sila. Do not just think that 5 precepts is good enough. But 5 precepts, yes, you must actually make sure that is the very fundamental. 5 precepts are the very basic. But for you to actually create that reservoir of merits for you to have a greater chance of going to heavens, you must make sure you practice the 8 precepts on Sabbath days. Make sure you do not actually be negligent and overlook that. So the Buddha tells you how wonderful it is, to be reborn in the heavenly realms. So in this sutta we can see that, okay, and in this sutta itself, next one, actually I shared this sutta with you. Actually, I just want to tell you, that again, the Buddha also gave this talk on 8 precepts on Visakha. Visakha is the foremost female supporter of the Buddha, right? And we call her Migara's mother. Right? Migara is actually Visakha's father-in-law, and because Visakha actually managed to give a talk, to this his father-in-law. His father-in-law became established in the faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So that's why this Visakha, Visakha's father-in-law was very grateful to Visakha, and he actually calls Visakha mother. So that's why it's called Migara's mother. It's actually Visakha. So here Visakha, the Buddha again tells Visakha, that you should practice the 8 precepts, on Sabbath days, and this sutta, of course, it talks about all the 8 precepts, which I've gone through just now, and again, if you see here, the Buddha also explains to Visakha, miserable is kingship over man, with heaven compared to heavenly bliss. So the Buddha again say you can be a king over the 16 kingdoms, but it is miserable compared to the celestial bliss as a Dewa. So that's why you must actually make the effort, the resolution to practice, observe the 8 precepts on Sabbath days. Even though you may not be a monk, but as lay people, you still have the opportunity to observe the 8 precepts. So do not let go of this opportunity. Do not miss the boat, miss the opportunity to practice the 8 precepts. The opportunity is right in front of us. Make sure we practice it, And again, in this Anguttara Nikaya 8.44, again, the Buddha had this conversation with this Vaseta, 8.44, and this occasion, the Blessed One was actually dwelling in Vesali. Vesali, a very important spiritual place in India, Vesali in the hall with a pig roof in the great wood. Then there was this male upasaka, this lay follower called Vaseta. He went to see the Buddha, and again, the Buddha tells this Vaseta, please, observe, complete the 8 factors. The Uposatha is of great fruit and great benefit. You see, again, the Buddha tells this upasaka, this Vaseta, this male follower, that observe the 8 precepts, because the 8 precepts are the benefits of great fruit and great benefit, That's why the Buddha says, so it is, Vaseta, so it is, If all Katyas would observe the Uposatha complete 8 precepts, that would lead to their welfare and happiness for a long time to come. The same thing, the Buddha says, if all Brahmins, Vesas and Sudas, see, the Buddha says even the Sudas, the Sudas are the untouchables in India at the time. They are the lowest caste, they are really the considered the minions, nobody even that wants to go near the Sudas, and and they don't want their shadows to even cast on them. So the Brahmins absolutely detest the Sudas, and they look down on them contemptuously or with much contempt. They don't like Sudas. But the Buddha says even if the Sudas were to observe the 8 precepts, it will lead to their welfare and happiness for a long time to come. And and these Sudas will become Devas, which even outshine the Brahmins. So if the world with its Dewa, Brahma, Brahmin, and population would observe the Uposatha complete 8 factors, that will lead to their welfare and happiness for a long time to come. So the last one, you see the importance of this Uposatha, these 8 precepts is highlighted by the Buddha in the last sentence. You look at the last sentence here. If these great sao trees, sao trees are actually huge trees. When the Buddha passed into Parinibbana, he actually was lying between 2 sao trees that actually burst into bloom, right? So these sao trees were actually huge, humongous trees, but they bloom with very beautiful flowers. So if these great sao trees will observe the Uposatha complete in 8 factors, that will lead to the welfare and happiness for these great sao trees for a long time to come, if they could choose. The Buddha is always so careful with his words. If they could choose, means if the great sao trees had mind, if they actually have got this chitta, but of course trees don't have chittas, right? Trees, even though they are living things, they don't have chittas, they don't have mind. So the Buddha says if these trees had chittas, and the mano and the chittas, if they could actually choose, they could actually and they observe the 8 precepts, it will actually be for their well benefits, and the trees could actually be reborn as devas if they had chittas. But of course, the Buddha says they could not choose. So how much more than for a human being? So the Buddha says if you're a human being and if you're able to observe the 8 precepts, it's actually for your benefits, wonderful benefits for a long time to come. You see, the Buddha emphasized time and time again the importance of observing the 8 precepts. But somehow this importance of 8 precepts has somehow lost their importance. We have actually somehow forgotten, in a way. After such a long time, we've forgotten about these 8 precepts, but we just confine it just during meditation retreats. We just observe. After that, we come back, oh, no need already, because not really feasible or not really practical to practice 8 precepts. But if you put your mind to it, it's possible to observe 8 precepts. Even though you're working, you're busy, you can actually observe 8 precepts. Just make sure you eat your meals, maybe have an early lunch, before the solar noon, just go for early lunch before the solar noon, and after that, make sure you don't eat after that, and make sure you don't watch TVs, don't watch movies, don't wear garlands, and make sure you sleep on a low bed, and don't watch movies or wear perfumes or makeups. It's possible. You can actually observe the 8 precepts, So that's why the Buddha says, it's important. And then in this Sutta 8.3.70, the Buddha actually talks about during Uposatha day, how should you actually meditate, The Buddha actually tells the lay people during this Uposatha days, you see, the Buddha is so detailed, he gives you a lot of guidance. Okay, first of all, he tells you, okay, what are the 8 precepts? How should you practice? And then during these 8 precepts, how should you meditate? Then the Buddha says, during this Uposatha day, this disciple of the noble ones, he recollects about the Buddha, the Tathagata, the Buddha, about this 9 wonderful qualities, this wonderful wonderful qualities of the Buddha, in terms of the qualities, and also in terms of how wonderful, recollect, the wonderful qualities, and the traits and characteristics of the Buddha, and just like what we actually chanted earlier, the Itipiso Bhagava Arahang, Sama Sambuddha, Vijja Charana Sampano, Sugato Loka Vidu, right? So all these, in one by one, you contemplate, the quality of the Buddha, Bhagava Arahan, how is he an Arahan? Sama Sambuddho, perfectly self-awakened one, Vijja Charana Sampano, perfectly in conduct, and knowledge, and wisdom, so you bring yourself, inspire yourself that you're following such a wonderful being, the Buddha, with all these wonderful qualities, Then of course the Buddha says you also recollect about the Dhamma, Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, how is Sanditiko, Akaliko, Ehipasiko, you actually you recollect how wonderful the Dhamma is, well expounded with Blessed One, is actually to be directly personally experienced, timeless, immediate in all these, inviting investigation, and evaluation, so all these are the wonderful qualities of the Dhamma. And also the Buddha says that you also must, when you observe the Uposatha Sila, must also recollect, the wonderful qualities of Sangha, about all the qualities as you actually chant, every day, all these are, in terms of the qualities, when you actually chant in Pali, and then after that, the Buddha says you must also recollect, about your own virtues. Think about how wonderful your virtues have been, or your 5 precepts. To try to actually think, recollect, have I actually observed my 5 precepts well? How about did I do anything of the 10 unwholesome actions? So when you find that, oh, I'm able to guard, my sila well, you find that there is this wonderful feeling, this joy and this inspiration that wells up in you, and it's a spiritual joy, And so during Uposatha, the Buddha asks you to recollect your own virtues. And also the Buddha says, in Uposatha, you must also recollect the devas. Think about the devas in all the different realms, the fact that they're there because what? Because they observe their sila well. They do a lot of dana, just like me. So what the devas done, I've also done. So it is very likely, that I may be reborn in the deva realms as well, So you must actually feel that internal joy, the spiritual joy, and the spiritual rapture in you, that you can feel goosebumps, just by recollecting all these. So this is the spiritual joy that you can actually never get by maybe going on a tour, visiting a country, or maybe eating a plate of food, listening to nice music. You won't get that sort of goosebumps in you, But if you actually contemplate this, the spiritual joy is very different from your mundane pleasure. This is a very special spiritual joy that only you yourself can experience. So that's why the Buddha says, if you're observing Uposatha Sila, try to think about this, recollect virtues of the Buddha, the Tathagata, Dhamma, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and try to recollect, in terms of your own virtues, in terms of devas, So if you're able to recollect this, then you observe the 8 precepts together, then in a way you actually observe the 8 precepts, well, and perfectly in terms of the 8 factors of this Uposatha Sila. And of course, in this sutta, the Buddha again talks about, how wonderful it is to be, once you practice these 8 precepts, then you actually stand a high chance to be reborn in the Deva realm. Then you see, one day in the 4 great heavenly king is 50 human years, and then, as a Davatimsa heaven, 100 human years. Can you imagine your lifespan is so long, and you enjoy all the exquisite enjoyment and the pleasure of the sense pleasure that nobody can actually describe. That's why in the suttas, this Buddha actually asks, if you were to ask the devas whether they want to come back and enjoy our sensual pleasures as human beings, the deva actually says, no, thank you, thank you very much. Thank you, but no. I'm actually very happy, in the Deva realm. It's like so exquisite here. Your human enjoyment is actually nothing, it's just really nothing compared to Deva realm. Okay, so again, in this Angkara Nikaya 8.45, again, just now was a male follower. Here is a female follower called Boja. And again, the Buddha tells this female follower, this Upasika, that you have to observe the 8 precepts. It's of great benefit. So the Buddha, you see, he has been encouraging and exhorting us to observe the 8 precepts. But nowadays, I find Buddhists are actually less keen on 8 precepts. They find it's not really not really very difficult for me, not practical. I just observe it, during meditation retreats. After that, maybe I'll just keep my 5 precepts. That's good enough. But if you look at this, you are missing a very wonderful opportunity, to practice the 8 precepts. So the Buddha says you must actually observe the 8 precepts well. So here, you see, just now I told you about this 4 great kings because they are near to us, right? And they actually do this inspection on us from time to time, right? I said that, actually in the suttas, you find that 4 great kings actually come and visit us from time to time, right? Actually, you find here, Anguttara Nikaya 3.37 called the kings. You'll be surprised, that the 4 great kings are actually quite interested in what we do. They actually observe us from time to time, and they take quite like a keen interest on us, They want to see what the humans are doing, So you see, the Buddha says here, bhikkhus, on the 8th of the fortnight, means the lunar calendar is the 8th day, the Chepe, the 8th day, the Chepe is the 8th day. The ministers and assembly members of the 4 great kings wander over this world. So on the Chepe, right, is the ministers and assembly members of the 4 great kings. The 4 great kings don't go. They send their ministers and assembly members. Means they send their kakia there, They send their ministers. So their ministers will think, we hope there are many people who behave properly towards their mother and father, and behave properly towards ascetics and Brahmins, honors the elders of the family, and observe the uposatha, and keep the extra observance days and do meritorious deeds. So there's these ministers of these 4 great kings go there and they check, are there many people who actually behave well to the parents or not? Are they actually being pious to the parents? And do they behave properly towards the monks or not? And do they honor the elders of family or not? And do they actually observe the uposatha or not? You look at this. Do they observe the uposatha? You see? So here the 4 great kings ministers are actually checking on us. Are we actually observing the uposatha? And do we keep the extra observance days? And do we do meritorious deeds? Do we do dana sila bhavana? And then on the 14th day of the fortnight, the sons of the 4 great kings wander of the world, and they of course do the same inspection again. This is the 14th day of the fortnight, and on the 15th day of the upasata, means the chapgo, chapgo, the uposatha sila, the 4 great kings themselves roam over the world. So the 15th day, on the full moon day, the 4 great kings themselves will come out, and they will roam. They will check on the human realms whether we are doing all these or not. Are we observing uposatha sila or not? And are we actually being respectful to our parents, our monks, and also our elders of family? And are we actually keeping the 8 precepts? Are we observing, and are we doing meritorious deeds or not? We hope so the what do you call that? This 4 heavenly great kings, they why do they actually are so concerned about whether we do good deeds or not? Because they say here, we hope there are many people who behave properly towards their mother and father and do meritorious deeds. Because here, if bhikkhus, there are few people who actually do this. For example, they find that in the human real world, few people actually behave properly towards their parents. They actually treat their parents very badly, and they don't do great deeds, and they don't actually observe their uposatha sila. Then you see the word here, the Tava Timsa Devas become displeased. They becomes very unhappy. They say, oh no, the celestial company will decline and the company of asuras will flourish. Means if you actually, if human beings don't practice all these dana sila bhavana, and they actually don't observe the 8 precepts, then the retinue of the devas will shrink, will decline. And the company of the asuras are the one always at war with the devas, they will flourish, because these asuras are the one who don't keep their precepts, right? So because of that, the asuras will flourish, but then the devas will become less and less, will dwindle in number. So that's why the 4 great heavenly kings, they want us they want to see more and more human beings do good deeds, and more importantly observe the uposatha sila, because by observing 8 precepts, it is actually a very strong foundation for you to be reborn in among the devas. That's why in the last paragraph here, you see, if there are many people who behave properly towards mother, father, and do meritorious deeds, and they observe their silas, and they treat their parents well, so these 4 great kings, they will report these 4 great kings, they will actually go up to Tava Timsa heaven, and they will report this in the Sudama Council Hall. If you know this Buddhist suttas, you find that in Tava Timsa there is this hall called the Sudama Hall. And in this Sudama Hall, actually this kings, this Sakadeva Raja will give Dhamma talks from time to time, especially for those devas who are able to give Dhamma talks. They're invited to give Dhamma talks at Sudama Hall. And this four great heavenly kings, if they find that a lot of people actually observe the 8 precepts and they treat their parents well, they do merits, and they actually cultivate the merits, and they respect the monks, and they will report this to Tava Timsa Devas, in the Sudama Council Hall. They say, Reverend Sirs, there are many people who behave well and observe their sila, and because of this, the Devas become elated. You see, indeed, the celestial companies will flourish and the company of Deva Asuras will decline. And they actually rejoice because the more people actually do good deeds and observe their 8 precepts, there will be more and more Devas being reborn. So their retinue will become stronger, So that's why the 4 great heavenly kings always observe us on these Sabbath days, in terms of the 8th day, the 15th day, and the 14th day, That means like the 8th day, the 15th day, the 23rd day, because of the 15th day plus the 8th is 23rd, right? 23rd and also the 29th or the 30th day will be your Sabbath days, So these 4 Sabbath days, different groups of the 4 great heavenly kings will come and inspect, and they want to see what we are doing. They're actually very curious to see what you're doing, whether we're doing good or not. So again, here, just now in the sutta, we can see Sabbath days, as explained by the Buddha, is actually this here, the 14th, the 15th, the 8th of the fortnight, during special fortnights. These are the Buddhist Sabbath days, which means that the 8th day, the 15th day, and then the 8th day of the fortnight means the 15 plus is 23, and then the 23, and then you have the 14th day, means it's either the 29th or the 30th. So 8, 15, 23rd, 29th, or 30th. So actually, the Thai calendar, the Thai Buddhist calendar actually follow this, the 8, 15, 23rd, 29th, and 30th will be the Sabbath days. But of course, different Buddhist traditions, follow different Sabbath days. For example, the Burmese, the Thai, and also some other traditions, they follow Sabbath days on different days. But I find the Thai calendar actually is easier to follow, which is actually the 8, 15, 23rd, or the 29th or 30th, because some lunar calendars actually have got 29th, some 30th, right? So in the Hokkien we say the che pe zap go ji sa or ji gao or sa zap, right? But sometimes 29th, sometimes 30th, but we observe these 4 days as a Sabbath days. So the Buddha actually tells us we must actually observe these 4 Sabbath days. Again, in this sutta, this Sutta Nipata, this 2.14, again, there is this Dhamma talk to Dhammika, about the importance of 8 precepts. I won't go through this, but you can refer to it if you want. But I just want to highlight to you, there's this 8 precepts. Of course, it's important because it builds a great foundation for us, to actually practice our Dhamma, and it gives us a strong foundation for us to be born in the human, in the heavenly realms, in the Deva realm, But we must be mindful that this good observance of 8 precepts or your 5 precepts, or abstaining from the 10 unwholesome actions, it is not an end by itself. That's why the Buddha says in this Majjhima Nikaya number 29, in this the discourse on simile of the hardwood, observing of sila, is not an end by itself. It's not the final destination. It is just a means to an end. Because observing sila, of course, it will actually it provides you the merits, and also the base, the foundation for you to reborn in the Dewa realm. But as you know, Devas, the existence of Dewa, it is also anatta, right? It is also non-self. The reason why they were reborn as Devas, is because of the support of the good merits, from the sila and also from dana, But it is actually not permanent, and it's empty, because once these good merits are actually exhausted, these devas, they actually they will actually disintegrate and disappear from the Deva realm, and they need to be reborn somewhere else. So that's why if you see here, if you actually look at one of the suttas where the Buddha actually talks about, in terms of the let me see, these are the three. Okay. So there's this one sutta which I have not included here, but you can actually look at it up yourself, where the Buddha actually talks about, when the devas are about to pass away from the deva realm, there are 5 signs. Means their celestial flowers will actually wither, and then their celestial garment will become very soiled, and they are not happy, sitting on the in the celestial throne, the chair, and they'll have cold sweats in their armpits, So all these are signs that they're about to pass away as human realms, as from the Deva realms. And when you pass away from the Deva realm, there's no assurance where you'll be reborn. It doesn't mean from Deva realm means you always be able be reborn as a human or Deva, because the Buddha says in Samyutta Nikaya 56.33, as long as you are not a Sotapanna, where you're reborn is just like throwing a stick up in the air, and where this stick lands, whether it is the top part or the lower part, it nobody knows, So it depends, on the karma that you have actually performed, So there is actually no certainty, in this samsara, So if you actually just observe sila alone, and you actually don't practice, bhavana, which is your mental cultivation, then forever you are actually just being chained to this samsara, and you may be a deva in the next life, but it may be exhausted, and there's no certainty where you be reborn. So that's why the Buddha always asks us to make sure that we actually practice bhavana, which is actually very important. Bhavana. That's why the Buddha in MN 148, the Buddha actually asks us, wherever we are, when even in our day-to-day lives, when we actually when we interact, in our day-to-day lives, make sure, that you actually establish your mindfulness in the 6 sense doors. It's very important. You need to know, you need to have mindful in terms of what you see, what you smell, what you hear, what you taste, what you touch, and what you think. These are the 6 sets of 6. And these 6 sense doors are very important. And you need to actually see how your mind reacts to these 6 sense doors. And the moment you find that there is actually greed, hatred, and delusion arising in your mind, lobha, dosa, moha, you must practice the citta nupassana, in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the satipatthana, right? One of the third one is a citta nupassana. You must actually observe what actually happens in lobha, dosa, moha, and from there, this lobha, dosa, moha, you actually need to first of all, of course, you need to calm yourself first, by doing samatha, because when you're angry, you can't actually, and your mind is boiling, you can't actually contemplate, right? So you must actually do samatha, maybe by practicing anapanasati or doing some other house chores to diffuse your anger, Then from there, you actually contemplate how does this anger arise, through causes and conditions, which is this 6 sets of 6, For example, this anger, how does it arise? Oh, this anger arose, is because of this unpleasant feeling, this unpleasant feeling I have, because somebody said something unpleasant. And how does this unpleasant feeling arise? Oh, it's because of my thought. This thought, that why? How could this person actually speak like that to me? About backstabbing me. About all these untrue things. And then this thought itself, is actually caused by perception. Or perception, someone has actually spoken something bad about you. And from perception, how does it arise? Oh, it's because of contact. And how does contact arise? Oh, it's because of ear consciousness. On ear consciousness, because of what you hear and also your ear. So you can see that actually this anger is actually nothing but just empty. It's actually anatta. And it's actually arise because of causes and conditions through these 6 sets of things, right? So the Buddha, that's why in MN 146, 6 sets of 6, and you find that this anger is actually empty, and by you contemplating this 6 sets of 6, you actually contemplate the 5 aggregates as well, right? Because you actually contemplate about the anger, which is your sankhara, right? And also you also anger about the unpleasant feeling, which is your feeling. You also contemplate about your thoughts, which is your sankhara, your perceptions, which is your sanya, and also you also contemplate about the ear and the contact with the ear and the sound, which is actually the form, rupa, and also you actually contemplate about the ear consciousness, which is consciousness. So by looking at this, you actually contemplate the 5 aggregates through the 6 sense doors, and from here you're able to see the intrinsic nature of all things, of all these greed, anger, and delusion. Actually is empty. There's nothing substantive to it. It's all empty. It's just like a mirage. You feel that there's something there, but actually when you go there, there's nothing. Or you actually find that it's like a banana trunk. You find that, wow, it's a banana trunk, but when you peel off the banana trunk, one layer by one layer, there's nothing there. There's actually nothing there, but it's all coming together, and it feels like this banana trunk, is something solid and permanent, but it's nothing there. So, well, from this, you're able to see through this ignorance, which is actually the culprit, is the main culprit, the main culprit that actually has caused us to suffer so much in this samsara, is because of this avidya, this ignorance that has caused us to have this illusion that everything actually has got a permanent self. But if you see this anatta, then slowly you're actually cutting off these layers and layers of avidya, and from there you're able to see the true nature of things, and you're able to see the Four Noble Truths with wisdom. You're able to see with wisdom why the Four Noble Truths is so true and so right based on what the Buddha has taught. And from there, you're able to cut off the paticca samuppada, because once the avidya is gone, there's actually no more coming. This whole thing is gone. Everything unwinds itself. Everything stops. That's why the arahants they're able to actually be enter into parinibbana, because why? They have uprooted ignorance. They have uprooted ignorance through this wisdom of seeing the anatta nature of all intrinsic of all conditioned phenomena. Everything that the arahant sees is actually anicca, is empty. That's why he doesn't cling onto this. He's disillusioned. He's dispassionate. He's no longer illusion, being held by the illusion of this self, and he's being dispassionate, and he doesn't cling on to this sense of self anymore. That's why in our Dhamma practice, sila is important, yes, but make sure that we also cultivate ourselves, and practice this bhavana, continuously, so that we can actually uproot the 10 fetters, and also all the loba, dosa, moha, and also ignorance, slowly and surely, so that we're able to get out of samsara, in time, or in our own time, so that we're able to eradicate all our sufferings, which is actually the whole objective of us practicing the Dhamma, taught by the Blessed One. And the Blessed One actually teaches only one teaching, which is to actually escape from samsara, to eradicate all sufferings and to escape from samsara. This is what the Buddha means, when it says suffering. It's not just physical suffering, but also the suffering, of the empty nature of all conditioned phenomena, the subject to deterioration, subject to change. That is the real subtle suffering that we are not aware of, but it's actually knocking our doorstep every time, and we are not aware. We think everything is constant, everything is permanent, but actually in real fact, everything is empty. There's nothing to it. It's just a mirage, an illusion. So that's why in my Dhamma talk, I've told you the importance of dana and sila, but more importantly, we must cultivate wisdom. We must develop this wisdom as a sword to actually uproot this ignorance, and all this loba, dosa, moha must be uprooted. So in my talks going forward, I'm also going to be also highlighting about this loba, dosa, moha, and how to uproot them, through this practice of bhavana, so that we'll be able to uproot all these defilements, so that we'll be able to achieve this enlightenment slowly, from stream entry, slowly, incrementally, all the way up to arahant. But in this life, we must strive to attain stream entry first, because if not, then our human lives are in vain. We will have lost our chance, as human beings. So we must make sure we double up the effort, practice what the Buddha tells us, do a lot of good deeds, observe your sila, and also practice, cultivate your mind, read your mind, watch your mind. Always watch for causes and conditions. Try to see anicca, dukkha, anatta. Then from there, you actually develop wisdom, and slowly, you once you become a stream enterer, a sotapanna, then up to 7 lives now, you are out of this samsara. So slowly and surely, we'll be able to improve ourselves, so that we will be able to practice in accordance with what the Buddha has taught, and then get out of samsara, gradually, but surely. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Brother Loo, again for the wonderful sharing this week on the importance of making the resolution to observe and follow 8 precepts more often, more regularly. Especially, we should commit ourselves in following the 8 precepts during Sabbath day to gradually cut off sensual pleasure and develop ourselves spiritually. We must also have patience and practice meditation to strive and aspire to reborn in the Deva realm to meet the next Buddha. So that's all for today. And before we end this session, let's invite Sister Lily to conclude this session with closing puja. Over to you, Sister Lily.
Thank you, Brother Loo, and also Sister Amber. Dear brothers and sisters, we have spent more than 2 hours listening to the Dhamma shared by Brother Loo. We have tried our best to keep our mind wholesome most of the time at our best. So let's dedicate the merits to all devas and all celestial beings. Akasatta cha bhummata deva naga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva cirang rakkantu loka sasanang etavatta cha amhehi sambatang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe bhuta sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Let's dedicate the merits to all our departed ones. May they rejoice in these merits, and they may be born in happy states of existence. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yawa nibbana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you for joining us this week. We wish all brothers and sisters in the Dhamma a well-rested and blessed Sunday. Do join us next week with these channels with another chanting session and enlightening online sharing with other Dhamma speakers. So thank you very much and see you again next week.